During the Battle of the Alamo, 200 Texans were responsible for 2,000 Mexican troops during Texas's War for Independence. The Texans held off the Mexican troops led by General Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna for 13 days, but on March 6, 1836, the Mexican troops broke through the Alamo defenses and killed all but a few Texans. The Alamo became a source of inspiration for Texans fighting for independence, and many used the rally cry, "Remember the Alamo." Several months after the Battle of the Alamo, the Texans led by Sam Houston won the Battle of San Jacinto and captured General Santa Anna, who eventually granted Texas their independence. 9 years later, in 1845, Texas was annexed by the United States and became a state.
Any last words?
Remember the Alamo. 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 Remember the Alamo.
The Battle of Antietam is known as the bloodiest single-day battle of the Civil War due to the fact that over 22,000 men died on the battlefield. Confederate General Robert E. Lee believed that the strategic and political gains that could be achieved from invading into the farthest northern territory in the entire war justified breaking the Confederacy's strict defensive strategies. Unfortunately, Lee's battle plans leaked to Union General McClellan. Instead of taking advantage of these plans, McClellan chose to keep a methodical and defensive approach. At first, neither side seemed to be making any headway. However, McClellan's numerical superiority eventually outweighed Lee, forcing him to retreat. The Battle of Antietam makes its lasting contribution to the world, and the fact that the Union's ability to hold off Confederate forces gave President Abraham Lincoln the confidence to pass the Emancipation Proclamation, which freed all slaves in Confederate states. After the attack on Pearl Harbor, the United States had the ultimate goal of reaching the Japanese mainland. The United States Army, Marines, and Navy used island hopping in order to reach the mainland of Japan. The U.S. was advancing towards Japan quickly. The next island to be captured after the Marshall Islands was Iwo Jima. Iwo Jima would allow the United States military to set up a base close to the Japanese mainland. Iwo Jima was heavily defended. A complex system of tunnels and bunkers awaited the U.S. soldiers. The fighting lasted for 5 weeks and resulted in an American liberation of the island. A very famous photograph came from this battle of 6 U.S. Marines raising the American flag on the island. The picture raised patriotism in the country and appeared on postage stamps and propaganda for the war effort. The battle at Lexington and Concord is considered to be the first true battle of the Revolutionary War. However, it was first intended to be a British raid into colonial villages in order to capture Patriot leaders Sam Adams and John Hancock. These plans were quickly discovered, and many men, including Paul Revere and Sam Prescott, rode through the towns warning the colonists of the coming British. When the British Army arrived in the town of Lexington, they were met by the local militia, called Minutemen, due to their ability to be ready to fight in a minute. Even though the British outnumbered the colonists by a 3-to-1 ratio, neither side knew exactly what to do, as a direct confrontation on this level had never happened before. It was at this moment that a shot rang out in the crowd. Though it has never been confirmed which side fired it, this would come to be known as the shot heard round the world, as after the shot was fired, a battle immediately broke out. The British attempted to push out onto the town of Concord, but were met by militia reinforcements, eventually forcing them to retreat. The battle started the American Revolution. Did you hear that?
What?
Did you hear that? No. Did you hear that?
Hear what?
Did you hear that?
What?
The Battle of New Orleans took place during the War of 1812, or more accurately, just after the War of 1812. It involved British and American forces. The American forces were led by Andrew Jackson. The outcome of the battle was a clear American victory. The victory made Americans feel like they had won the War of 1812, which in reality was debatable. In addition, this battle caused public opinion of Andrew Jackson to skyrocket. This public fame propelled Jackson all the way to the presidency. This, in combination with the boost of morale, gave the Battle of New Orleans the number 6 spot on our list.
Hey, did you hear?
No, what?
The war is over.
That's great. Does everyone know?
Aw,
Message, the war's over.
What?
Battle British.
The D-Day invasion took place during World War II and was a major Allied invasion of the beaches of Normandy, France. This invasion marked one of the largest troop mobilizations in all of world history. As far as the direct outcome of this invasion is concerned, the Allies were able to reconquer France and achieve victory in the European theater, henceforth known as VE Day. The indirect outcome of D-Day's invasion was massive. If the Allies were unsuccessful or did not launch this invasion, the Axis powers would most likely have won the war. This would change everything from world maps to prevailing governmental ideology. During World War II, the United States President Franklin Delano Roosevelt promised that the United States would not intervene in the war. Meanwhile, in Asia, Japan was becoming an imperialistic power trying to gain territory in Asia. This included the Philippines, which was a U.S. territory. In July 1941, FDR cut off the oil supply to Japan in order to hinder Japan's imperial efforts. The combination of the oil embargo and the need for the Philippines caused Japan to launch an attack on Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor was the biggest U.S. naval base in the Pacific and the force that could end Japan's imperialism. The attack happened early in the morning on December 7, 1941. The surprise attack killed around 2,500 people and destroyed much of the naval fleet. The day after the attack, FDR declared war on the Empire of Japan. The Battle of Yorktown was the last battle of the American Revolution and ensured American victory. After several weeks of fighting in Yorktown, on October 17, 1781, General George Washington and his French allies received a notice of surrender from the British commander, Lord Cornwallis. 2 days later, the surrender was finalized and thousands of British troops were captured. The war officially ended with the signing of the Treaty of Paris in 1783, which recognized the U.S. independence from Great Britain. Prior to the Battle of Gettysburg, the South had all the momentum in the Civil War. General Robert E. Lee led his troops to the North with hopes to demoralize the Union and end the Civil War. The Confederates were met by General George Meade of the Union in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Meade's soldiers were able to win the three-day battle and drive Lee's forces back to the South. The victory in Gettysburg gave the Union the momentum in the war and allowed them to rampage through the South en route to victory in the Civil War. Several months after the battle, President Lincoln traveled to Gettysburg and delivered one of the most famous speeches in U.S. history, known as the Gettysburg Address.
7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on the new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and that is so dedicated can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men living and dead who struggle here have consecrated it.
The Battle of Saratoga took place during the American Revolution and was an armed conflict between both Patriot and British belligerents. The outcome was a decisive American victory that would turn the tide of the Revolutionary War. In addition, this battle convinced France to join the war on the side of the colonists. Without French aid, the colonists would most likely have lost this war. Due to this battle's significance in the initial formation of the United States, it earned the #1 spot on our list.
Bonjour, je suis de France. Je veux t'aider.
I have no clue what he just said.